The morning sun painted the Kenyan savannah in shades of gold when Ranger David Thompson first spotted the impossible sight through his binoculars. A massive elephant matriarch was walking steadily toward the Amboseli Ranger Station, carrying something precious in her trunk with the delicate care of a mother cradling a newborn child. But what made his hands tremble as he adjusted the focus was not just the sight of a wild elephant approaching human territory. It was the blood trailing behind them in the red dust, and the way the small calf in her grasp hung motionless, its tiny trunk dangling like a broken branch. In 34 years of protecting Kenya's wildlife, David had never witnessed anything that would prepare him for what was about to unfold. This was not just another rescue story. This was about to become the moment when the invisible barrier between wild and human would dissolve forever, carried across 15 kilometers of unforgiving terrain by a mother's love that refused to surrender to nature's cruelest laws. The story begins 3 days earlier, deep in the acacia woodlands where the Amboseli ecosystem meets the shadow of Mount Kilimanjaro. Kessie had been leading her small family group through their ancestral migration routes when the world changed forever. She was not just any elephant. At 34 years old, this matriarch had survived droughts that killed thousands, navigated her family through expanding human settlements, and earned the respect of every creature in her territory through decades of wise leadership. Her daughter Juma, barely 8 months old, had been born during the short rains when the savannah bloomed with new life. The little calf had inherited her mother's intelligence and her grandmother's stubborn curiosity, traits that usually served elephant families well in their harsh environment. But curiosity, when combined with the innocent fearlessness of youth, can lead even the wisest creatures into danger. The poacher's snare had been set with calculated cruelty, hidden beneath fallen branches along the elephant path. When Juma wandered ahead of the family group, following the scent of sweet grass near a hidden water source, she stepped directly into the concealed death trap. The sound of her terrified trumpet call reached Kessie's ears like a blade through her heart. In the seconds it took for the matriarch to reach her daughter, the wire had already begun its terrible work. The snare tightened around Yuma's rear leg with every movement, cutting deep into flesh and bone. The more she struggled, the more the wire cut, creating wounds that would prove nearly impossible to heal in the wild. But Kessie's initial response was pure maternal fury. She charged toward the area where the snare had been set, trumpeting warnings that echoed across the savannah. With her trunk and tusks, she destroyed everything within reach, desperately attempting to free her daughter from the human-made trap. But elephant intelligence goes beyond simple emotion. Even in moments of crisis, as Kessie worked to untangle the wire from Juma's leg, her analytical mind was processing information that would lead to an unprecedented decision. She had encountered humans throughout her life, mostly as threats to be avoided or challenged. Rangers, researchers, tourists, and poachers all represented different levels of danger in her mental map of survival. However, Kessie had also observed something few elephants ever witnessed directly. 2 years earlier, she had watched from a distance as rangers treated an injured buffalo near the border of the park. The humans had used tools and medicines that seemed to heal wounds that would have meant certain death in the wild. She had seen the buffalo recover and return to her herd, something that would have been impossible without human intervention. That memory, stored in the complex neural networks that make elephants among the most intelligent creatures on Earth, began to surface as Kessie examined her daughter's injuries. The wire had cut through muscle and bone, creating wounds already showing signs of infection. In the wild, such injuries almost always led to a slow, painful death. But Juma was not just any elephant calf. She was the future of their bloodline, the next generation that would carry forward the accumulated wisdom of centuries.
More than that, she was Kessie's heart walking outside her body, the focus of every protective instinct refined through millions of years of evolution.
The decision forming in Kessie's mind went against every survival instinct her ancestors had passed down through genetic memory. Elephants do not approach humans voluntarily. They do not seek help from the same species that has hunted them, displaced them, and destroyed their habitat for thousands of years. Yet, as Kessie gently lifted her injured daughter with her trunk, feeling the weak flutter of the calf's breathing against her chest, she found herself turning not toward the deep wilderness where her family usually sought refuge, but toward something that had never called to an elephant matriarch before. She was turning toward hope. The first ranger to spot them was Marcus, a young Maasai warrior who had grown up in villages surrounding Amboseli before joining the Kenya Wildlife Service. He was conducting a routine patrol along the park's southern boundary when he noticed dust clouds moving in a pattern that didn't match normal animal behavior. "David, this is Marcus on the Southern Patrol," he radioed, his voice trembling. "I've got something here you're not going to believe. There's an elephant moving directly toward the station, and she appears to be carrying an injured calf." David's voice came back immediately, sharp with disbelief. "Marcus, confirm your location. Are you saying an elephant is approaching human facilities?" "Affirmative. She's about 2 kilometers out and moving steady. This isn't normal behavior. She's walking with purpose, like she knows exactly where she's going." In his 3 decades as a ranger, David had seen elephants do many remarkable things. He had watched matriarchs navigate complex social conflicts, solve environmental problems that would challenge human intelligence, and display emotional depth that surprised even experienced wildlife professionals. But he had never heard of an elephant voluntarily approaching human facilities while carrying an injured family member. "Marcus, maintain visual contact, but do not approach. I'm mobilizing the team and calling Dr. Martinez. If this elephant is really doing what you think she's doing, we're about to witness something that has never been recorded before." Dr. Elena Martinez had been working with injured wildlife in the Amboseli ecosystem for 7 years, but her experience with elephant medicine was limited to sedated animals brought to the facility by rangers. The idea of treating an elephant calf in the presence of its protective mother was both medically challenging and potentially deadly. When David's emergency call came through, Elena was reviewing supply inventories. "Elena, we have an unprecedented situation developing. There's an elephant matriarch approaching the station carrying what appears to be a severely injured calf. I need to know if you can treat elephant injuries under field conditions with the mother present." "David, you know I can't safely treat an elephant calf with the mother present. Adult elephants are protective to the point of aggression. Any attempt to approach the baby will trigger defensive behavior that could get someone killed." "Elena, I understand the risks, but if what Marcus is seeing is accurate, this mother is voluntarily bringing her injured baby to us for help. That changes everything." The sun was climbing toward its zenith when Kessie finally appeared at the edge of the cleared area around the ranger station. Her massive form was silhouetted against the acacia trees like a monument to maternal determination. In her trunk, tiny Juma hung motionless, her breathing so shallow the rangers watching through binoculars could barely detect signs of life. Kessie moved with deliberate grace, her massive head held high despite the precious burden she carried. She moved slowly, pausing frequently to allow the humans time to observe her intentions. Her ears remained in a neutral position, neither pinned back in aggression nor spread wide in defensive posturing. Most remarkably, she was vocalizing in the low-frequency rumbles that elephants use for long-distance communication with family members. "David, she's not just approaching us randomly. Those vocalizations are social calls, the kind elephants make when they're trying to establish peaceful contact. She's treating us like potential allies, not threats." When Kessie reached a point approximately 10 meters from the medical station entrance, she stopped and carefully lowered her trunk to place Juma on the dusty ground. The movement was executed with extraordinary gentleness. Once Juma was settled on a patch of grass, Kessie backed away exactly 3 steps and stood motionless.
The message was unmistakable. She was presenting her injured daughter for treatment while demonstrating her willingness to maintain a respectful distance. Elena found herself facing a dilemma unlike anything covered in veterinary training. Standard protocol required full sedation and complete separation from protective adults, but those protocols had been developed for captured or orphaned animals, not for situations where a mother was voluntarily requesting help. Elena found herself facing a dilemma, unlike anything covered in veterinary training. Standard protocol required full sedation and complete separation from protective adults, but those protocols have been developed for captured or orphaned animals, not for situations where a mother was voluntarily requesting help. David, what if we try to communicate with her the same way she's trying to communicate with us? She demonstrated peaceful intentions and stepped back. What if we show similar respect and see if she'll allow us to approach Juma gradually? Elena began by moving very slowly toward her medical supplies, making her intentions obvious through exaggerated, deliberate movements. She spoke in a low, calm voice, addressing Cassie directly. "I'm going to help your baby, Cassie. I'm a doctor, and I want to make Juma better. Please let me help her." Cassie's response was immediate and unmistakable. She rumbled softly, the same vocalization she had been using to calm Juma during their long journey. The sound served as both acknowledgement and permission. Marcus, who had grown up listening to elephant vocalizations in Maasai villages, interpreted the sounds. "Dr. Elena, in my culture, we believe elephants can understand human intentions through our voices and body language. She's telling you that she trusts you with her baby." As Elena knelt beside the injured calf, Cassie leaned forward slightly, extending her trunk toward the human touching her daughter. The gesture brought her close enough that Elena could feel the elephant's breath, but instead of interfering, Cassie positioned herself to observe every aspect of Elena's work. The injuries were even more severe than Elena had feared. The snare had cut through muscle, tendon, and bone, creating wounds already showing signs of serious infection. Without immediate surgical intervention and aggressive antibiotic treatment, the calf would die within 24 hours. "David, the injuries require immediate surgery, but I can't sedate the calf with the mother this close. If Juma becomes unconscious or appears to be in distress, Cassie's maternal instincts will override any trust she's developed." David faced a decision that would determine whether this unprecedented display of trust would result in a miracle or tragedy. The team could attempt to drive Cassie away, but such action would destroy the trust and likely result in death for both mother and calf. Alternatively, they could honor Cassie's trust by proceeding with surgery in her presence, accepting the enormous risk. "Elena, what would you need to perform the surgery with Cassie present?" "I would need her to remain calm while I cause her baby apparent pain. I would need her to trust that the temporary distress is necessary for Juma's long-term survival. Most importantly, I would need some way to communicate with her throughout the procedure." Marcus stepped forward. "In my culture, the elders say that elephants can understand human emotions through our voices and body language. If you explain what you're doing while you work and show Cassie that you're trying to help rather than harm, she might allow you to continue." As Elena prepared her surgical instruments, Cassie moved closer to her daughter, positioning herself where she could maintain physical contact with Juma while observing every detail of Elena's work. The elephant's trunk remained gently touching the calf's head, providing comfort and monitoring her breathing with the sensitivity only a mother can provide. When Elena made the first incision to clean the infected wounds, Juma's weak cry of distress caused Cassie to tense visibly. Her entire body coiled with protective energy. For a moment that lasted an eternity, Elena thought she was about to be killed. But instead of attacking, Cassie rumbled softly to her daughter and looked directly into Elena's eyes with an expression that seemed to ask for reassurance. "I know it hurts, Cassie, but I have to clean the infection or she'll die. This is the only way to save Juma's life." Elena had no way of knowing whether Kessie understood the specific meaning of her words, but the elephant's response suggested she recognized the emotional content of Elena's communication. Kessie remained motionless as Elena continued working, occasionally rumbling to comfort Juma, but never interfering with the surgical procedure. As the hours passed, an extraordinary bond developed between the human doctor and the elephant matriarch. They were working together toward a shared goal, each using their unique abilities to ensure the survival of a life they both valued above their own safety. When Elena finally completed the surgery and began bandaging Juma's leg, Kessie moved even closer, inspecting the work with her trunk and rumbling approval when she observed that the bleeding had stopped and her daughter's breathing had become stronger. The moment of truth came when Elena stepped away from the sleeping calf, her surgical work complete. Kessie immediately moved to Juma's side, using her trunk to gently examine the bandages and surgical sites. Instead of showing aggression or suspicion, Kessie looked directly at Elena and rumbled in the deep resonant tones that elephants use to express gratitude. Marcus smiled through tears. "She's saying thank you, Dr. Elena. She knows you saved her baby's life." The morning after Juma's surgery brought new challenges. The little calf was showing strong signs of recovery, but would require at least 2 weeks of careful monitoring, daily medication, and protection from the harsh realities of life in the wild. Kessie had spent the entire night standing vigil beside her daughter, never moving more than a few meters away. She had not eaten or drunk water since arriving, her entire focus devoted to monitoring her baby's condition. "David, we have a serious problem," Elena said at sunrise. "Kessie hasn't eaten or drunk anything, and she's showing signs of severe stress from prolonged separation from her family group. Elephants can't survive long without their social connections." Marcus had been observing Kessie's behavior with cultural knowledge gained from growing up in Maasai communities. "Dr. Elena, in traditional Maasai culture, we understand that elephants have complex family relationships. Kessie hasn't just brought Juma here for medical treatment. She's made a decision to integrate human help into her family's survival strategy." Marcus suggested allowing Kessie to bring her family group to the ranger station, creating a temporary safe zone where Juma could recover while remaining connected to her elephant community. The decision was made when Juma herself provided the answer. On the 3rd morning after her surgery, the little calf managed to stand on her injured leg for the first time. Her movement was careful and limited, but strong enough to demonstrate that her recovery was progressing faster than Elena had predicted. More importantly, her recovery coincided with the arrival of Kessie's family group at the edge of the ranger station clearing. The elephants had followed her matriarch's scent trail across 15 kilometers, demonstrating the same remarkable navigation abilities that had brought Kessie to seek help. The reunion between Kessie and her family was a moment of pure emotional power. The elephants greeted each other with trumpeting calls and trunk embraces. But what made the moment truly extraordinary was Kessie's behavior toward the humans who had cared for her daughter. Instead of retreating to the safety of her family group, Kessie approached Elena and rumbled in deep, resonant tones. Then, in a gesture no one would ever forget, she extended her trunk and gently touched Elena's hand, holding contact for several seconds before stepping back and trumpeting what could only be interpreted as gratitude. Marcus translated the moment through tears. "She's saying that humans are now part of her family's story. We've become trusted allies in her world." The final test came when it was time to remove Juma's bandages and assess whether her leg had healed sufficiently for travel with the herd. Elena approached the procedure with the same respect and communication that had made the original surgery possible, explaining each step to Kessie and waiting for her rumbled permission before touching her daughter. When the bandages came away, they revealed wounds that had healed cleaner and faster than Elena had dared hope. Juma's leg was still weak and would require careful management, but she was capable of the limited walking that would allow her to stay with her family. As Alina packed away her medical supplies, Kessie made one final gesture that demonstrated the depth of understanding that had developed between species. She guided Juma to Alina's side and rumbled encouragement as the calf extended her tiny trunk to touch the doctor's hand, mimicking the gesture of gratitude her mother had made. The moment represented more than successful medical treatment or unprecedented cooperation. It was the passing of trust from one generation to the next, ensuring that the bond formed during this crisis would become part of the collective memory that elephants pass to their offspring. When Kessie's family group finally departed from the ranger station, moving slowly to accommodate Juma's limited mobility, they left behind more than tracks in the red dust. They had changed the understanding of what was possible between humans and wildlife, proving that trust and cooperation could transcend the barriers of species when guided by shared commitment to protecting the vulnerable. David watched the elephants disappear into the acacia woodlands and realized his work as a ranger had been transformed. He was no longer simply managing wildlife populations or enforcing park boundaries. He had become part of an extended family that included some of the most intelligent and emotionally sophisticated creatures on Earth. Dr. Alina found that her medical practice had been similarly transformed. The skills she had developed treating domestic animals had evolved into something approaching interspecies communication, opening possibilities for wildlife medicine she had never imagined possible. Months later, when researchers analyzing elephant behavior in the Amboseli ecosystem noted that Kessie's family group had begun approaching ranger patrols without fear, they documented something unprecedented in scientific literature. The elephants were seeking out human contact, not as a threat to be managed, but as potential allies in the ongoing challenge of survival. The behavior had spread to other elephant families in the region, creating a new dynamic in human-wildlife relationships that challenged fundamental assumptions about the necessity of maintaining separation between wild animals and human communities. Years later, when Juma had grown into a healthy young elephant with only a small scar to remind observers of her early brush with death, she would approach rangers with the same fearless trust her mother had demonstrated. The next generation of elephants was growing up with an understanding that humans could be allies rather than threats, partners in the shared challenge of preserving the wild spaces that both species needed to survive. The story of Kessie and Juma became more than a record of successful wildlife medicine or remarkable interspecies cooperation. It became a testament to the transformative power of trust, demonstrating that love truly knows no boundaries when it is guided by wisdom, courage, and respect for the dignity of all living creatures. In a world where the future of wildlife often seems uncertain, the bond forged between an elephant matriarch and the humans who helped save her daughter offers hope that cooperation between species is not just possible, but essential for the survival of the natural world. Sometimes, the greatest conservation victories come not from protecting animals from human contact, but from proving that humans are worthy of the extraordinary trust that only love can inspire.